From Relay FM, this is Connected. Today's episode is episode 71, and it is our year in review show. This episode is brought to you by Braintree and TextExpander from Smile. We'll be talking about those a little bit later on. My name is Mike Hurley, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Mr. Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Oh, hey, Mike, and Merry Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas to you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. It's nearly New Year, so I'll in advance say Happy New Year. And I extend those same airs and graces to Mr. Stephen Hackett.
Good morning, gentlemen. It's nice to be back with you.
Good morning. We have a great show lined up today. We're going to be doing our year in review episode, which we started last year, and I'm happy is now becoming a little bit of a tradition. So we're going to break down every month and talk about the things that happened and look back fondly at the news of the year. But we do have a very slight piece of follow-up. I didn't want to do any follow-up today, but we kind of had to address this. Stephen, what happened?
I would say that we're in a transition period as the human race, really, between the year of Mike Was Right and the 18 months of Ticci Was Right. And in this transition, the Mike Was Right remnant has had a bit of a boost. An article this week in the Wall Street Journal talks about nose tapping on the Apple Watch.
Yep. I am aware of this article because it has been sent to me approximately 250 times.
Yes.
Well, that's what happens when you're a big deal on the internet, Mike. And it's an article that has words in it that I assume someone read. I didn't read. But there is a wonderful little graphic of a guy touching his nose to an Apple Watch in the weird, like, Wall Street Journal. Yeah.
That's what it's called, right? Stipple? Yeah.
Yeah.
Steeple,
It's old-timey looking.
I should have made this my profile picture for a while.
So this is an article here. You can go read about it, but it was long.
I have something very important to say in regards to Mike Was Right a little bit later on in the show.
I just want to point out how the title on the Wall Street Journal is different from the permalink of the article itself.
Oh, they do that all the time, don't they?
So the real title should be "Nosy Apple Watch Users Discover Another Way to Go Hands-Free," but for some reason on the webpage there's no nosy before Apple Watch users. I think that's and if you combine the title with the first photo, it's just perfect. Mike, this is all you've been working for this year to get some recognition of your, I guess, facial abilities.
I feel kind of sorry for people that work at the Wall Street Journal.
Why?
Because for the past 2 or 3 days, they keep getting this hashtag tweeted to them that they can't possibly understand.
No.
Right? Like I've seen it so much, right? Because people tag me in and I was like searching the hashtag. And so many people are just like tweeting at Joanna Stern and I think, is it David Galloway, the guy who wrote the article, and just saying Mike was right. Like, what can that mean? Like, when you see that, it must be so weird.
They must have thought it was some kind of new spam, you know?
That's a good point. Maybe that's what they thought it was. But yeah, I feel sorry for them. But I'm pleased that they wrote this, and it's a really great way to finish the year of, again, we'll get to that shortly. So shall we begin? I'm going to start with January. We're going to go round robin style, which is our favorite way to conduct any type of list.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about a small selection of the big stories that happened in January. We'll kick off with Mark Gurman leaking the 12-inch MacBook. If you remember, he wrote that massive piece talking about all of the things that he'd found out in regards to what would eventually become the MacBook. Microsoft introduced the HoloLens at an event that they did where they were talking about Windows 10. And Marco Arment wrote his blog post about the functional high ground. Now, I want to start off by talking about the 12-inch MacBook Air in a little bit more detail. I mean, I remember just us and every other Apple-focused podcast talking about this for weeks. You know, we were saying, oh, how could they make us laptops so small? How could they only have one port? And they ended up doing it. And I just wonder, like, Stephen, what do you think looking back at this? Kind of, one, how crazy it was that Gurman got it just so right, even down to, like, the design details. But also the fact that we're now kind of in this world where the MacBook exists.
I mean, the leak really was an incredible piece of work on his part. If you look at those renderings in that 9 to 5 article, it looks like it is the MacBook. It really is uncanny. And I think that as much as Apple heralds the MacBook as the kind of the future of notebooks, which is like a phrase, the future of X, Apple has used over the years for a bunch of different things. Clearly, the MacBook, I think, is the future. I think that notebook computers will look more like the MacBook in the future than they do now. But I think the MacBook itself is still really early on in its life as a product. My wife owns one. I use it pretty often. It's a fine machine. I don't want to talk down about it because it fits with what a lot of people want and need out of a Mac notebook. But it's definitely got some limitations depending on what's important to you. And I look forward to it becoming a little bit faster in the future. But I think that it's sort of leading the way in what Apple thinks notebooks should be. I'm not saying that every notebook is going to have one port on it. I think that's a concession they've made on this one. But I think the idea that a laptop should be fanless and run cool and be super lightweight and thin is something that Apple's been working towards for a long time.
I'm excited for an update to this laptop because now in my iPad Pro world, I don't need a MacBook Pro anymore. All I need is a Mac that I can take on holidays and on trips and on vacations in case I need to edit audio. Like, that's all I need. And now the MacBook is too big and too heavy because I'm carrying the laptop with my iPad Pro, which is my favorite computer. I was doing a lot of work on it this morning, Federico. I was annotating images and turning them into PDFs, a workflow. It was glorious, absolutely glorious.
Nice.
So
nice.
I'm interested to see, and I've got my fingers crossed that the 12-inch MacBook is like the original MacBook Air, and that the next one is going to be super powerful. I don't think it's going to happen, but I've got my fingers crossed for it anyway.
Yeah, looking back at this leak and the announcement, I wonder what's going to happen first. If my MacBook Air is going to die and I'll have to buy one of these MacBooks, or if the iPad Pro will get audio recording features with iOS 10.
I'm pretty convinced you'll be buying a new Mac before that happens.
Oh, what?
Yep.
So pessimistic, Mike.
I just don't see it happening. Because it just doesn't feel like that is important enough to Apple to make it so you can podcast from your
You
machine.
have no faith in the strength of my, MacBook Air. I mean, it's in pretty bad shape, but it's still, still going.
Didn't I read somewhere that you have to use a third-party app to log into your laptop?
Well, sometimes.
Why not just change your password not to use that key? You're using a third-party app that installs like a kernel. It does crazy stuff instead of just changing your password.
Well, it's not as easy as it sounds because basically the damage of the single E key extended to the entire row.
Oh my god!
Like the QWERT row. And so for some reason, sometimes that row of keys don't work. So maybe I should use a password that just uses the bottom two rows.
Oh my gosh.
That's a good idea, Simon, actually. I should change my
bill you.
password.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Do you guys want to talk about any of the other stories from January? The functional high ground one is Marco unfortunately got a lot of attention he didn't want for that piece, but I think that the merit was still there. And what I like the most now is that functional high ground has become a meme in our circle. That's my if you ask me, that's the best thing that came out of it, right? That we had the functional high ground meme.
Yeah, I don't know if Marco likes it that way. That it's sort of a meme.
I definitely said it to him at one point, I think he laughed.
Okay. So he's okay with it. Yeah, he made really strong points. But there was at least there was some truth to it. It's no secret that Apple...
This was about all the Discovery D stuff, right? And it was just a nightmare.
Yeah, but you can extend that to iOS, to OS 10, to Apple Watch. There's with such a wide product line, and this is one of the big topics of 2015. Apple has a bunch of new products and platforms. There are many issues that need to be fixed, and you could argue that Apple, when they had fewer products, they were maybe in a sense more stable or maybe more finished when they launched because the company wasn't stretched so thin, to to manage a bunch of different ecosystems and devices. And so maybe, Marco got the attention that he didn't want. And the timing, he also said, wasn't really on his part, because basically it was before CES, I think, and everyone was looking for something, was looking for news before the big trade show. So he definitely got, a lot of attention, maybe even more than, it was on TV, the article. So, but maybe, I think he said he almost wished he didn't write the posts, but I think there was some excellent points he raised.
I think, even though maybe the intention wasn't the same and the action wasn't as desired, I think it was still worthwhile.
Yeah.
So should we move on to February?
Let's do it. So February had some interesting tech news, but I really wanted to focus on two things. The beginning of Mike Was Right, which we just spoke about the end of it a second ago. But most importantly, February 26th, 2015 was a very special day.
It's the best day the internet has ever had.
Yeah, it was in hindsight, historians will look on this day as the pinnacle of what the internet is. Two things happened. First, the what color is the dress situation.
It's white and gold, man.
It is most of the time. Sometimes it's blue and black. Who knows how it works?
It is blue. Oh, come on, guys. Still arguing about this. It's blue and black.
It's white and gold.
I have looked at it a couple times preparing notes for this show, and it's changed on me just doing that.
Seriously, how can you see that as white and gold? Something is definitely wrong with your eyes if you see white and gold. Anyway, sorry.
But a couple hours before that, you remember that two llamas made a great escape to Phoenix. And in this BuzzFeed page, there's a vine, and there's these llamas just running down the street with police cars chasing them.
I'm so happy we have two BuzzFeed links in our show notes for this episode.
It's a unique time here on Connected. So I don't know. February 26th was a pretty great day, in my opinion.
It was amazing, and I remember the llama. One of the llamas also went on TV as some kind of guest on a talk show. I mean, obviously the llama can't talk, but
that would be a whole different internet day.
It was pretty awesome. I remember I was in my kitchen just making some coffee, and I was looking at the live stream for the llamas. It was seriously amazing. So good job, internet.
And then the beginning of Mike Was Right, which I believe is episode 28 of this fine program.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to talk about. So this is the news for me. So we have two things here. Are we deciding that Mike Was Right is only 12 months? That was what the ruling was, right?
Yes, which means you have a little more time.
So that means I have until the end of February.
Yeah. Well, it can overlap with the year of TG.
Okay. Good. So then I get my 12 months. We're not done yet, guys.
It's a gradual thing.
Another 2 months of this insanity.
Well, look, what can I say? Like, you got this Wall Street Journal article occurring. Like, it's still rolling on.
What have I done?
Remind us how it started.
Mike Was Right started with the iPhone, right?
I believe, yeah, it was you guys had just gotten the 6 Plus.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where it started. And one of you said it in the episode, and then it kind of took off from there.
Yeah, I remember you were trying to convince us that the 6 Plus was the better size. Mm-hmm. You've been doing that for... I think you had been doing that for a while, and then...
Well, it was from September to February, right? Like, it was a long time.
I mean, yeah. Steven and I are forced to listen to you. Mm-hmm. And then eventually Steven and I got the iPhone 6 Plus, and we were like, actually, we're liking this phone. And so you were like, oh yeah, I told you guys. You were like all gloating and stuff. And I think I like half jokingly said, yeah, hashtag Mike Was Right. And then a monster was born.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it became it had a life of its own that's lasted all the way up to the end of the year and will continue through to next year.
Are you proud of the things you've carried under the Mike Was Right banner?
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, the thing that I'm most proud of is the iPad Pro thing, where I called that they would do the iPad Pro at the September event, and everyone said I was wrong.
So not the nose, but
No,
the
I
iPad
mean
Pro.
that thing is like I'm happy that occurs. But after John Siracusa like systematically destroyed all my hopes and dreams on an episode of ATP where they were talking about that, I've kind of backed away from the nose tapping thing as my crowning achievement.
Okay.
So I think my crowning achievement for Mike was right was the calling the iPad at the September event.
All right.
What else happened in February, Stephen?
We also have the beginning of rumors of the Apple Car project, Project Titan,
Mm-hmm.
and we see Photos.app for the first time. So, kind of stories about something that may be way down the. I was really trying to say way down the road, but I said it anyways. As far as car rumors, and then of course photos, which photo management. You guys may remember we've talked about like once or twice. And this is Apple's shot at it, and I think for the most part people like it, and for the most part it's been successful for people. So what do you guys think? I mean, the car thing I think is more interesting because photos is it is what it is, but you know, the car is a multi-year story, and we're kind of been quiet. We know there's hiring going on, and there's a lot of trading of blows between Apple and Tesla in that department. And I don't know. Do you guys have any like thoughts on what this could end up meaning for next year or down the road further?
Well, I think we're definitely gonna hear a lot more, at least in terms of rumors and hires next year. Making a car seems to me the kind of effort that some kind of major leak is gonna occur. You know, whether it's testing or hiring people or buying new materials or setting up, new manufacturing plants, something's gonna leak, something major next year. At least that's how I feel. And I'm keeping an eye on this project because it's so different, right? I mean, it's one thing to say Apple is making a computer, then he's making an iPod, then he's making a phone, and now they're also making a watch, but it's all in the realm of computers in a way. But a car is a transportation vehicle. So it's of course based on computers and stuff, but it's so different from anything they've done before. And no, Steven, the iPod sucks. Don't count. So it's so different, and it requires such a different set of skills and people and suppliers and that kind of stuff. It's really interesting to me. And the multiple remarks by Jeff Williams and Tim Cook, or like, we don't want to talk about the car, but they're obviously working on something for the car. And every time they say, yeah, we have CarPlay, and sure, okay, we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if 2016 Gurman will have a major scoop on the Apple car. We'll see.
I kind of don't want to think about the Apple car, like the whole
because
idea
they don't
of
have a license.
Just the whole idea of it still seems ridiculous to me, and I can't completely see why they would want to do it. But one of my other favorite stories from February was the New Yorker's profile of Johnny Ive.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was a great piece, kind of unprecedented, and I like that it exists as a thing. I thought it was really interesting to read. So yeah, that's cool. I'm pleased that they did that. And I remember I didn't read this. I read a narration that somebody did. I can't remember where that came from. Somebody narrated it for me, and then I just listened to it. It was awesome.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Also from February, I think we saw the first in a string of acquisitions from Microsoft. They bought Sunrise, the popular and free calendar app for iOS and Android and the web and the Mac also. So it was on a bunch of platforms, and we wondered what's going to happen with Sunrise. And, Microsoft is kind of switching to be more of a cloud/mobile company. And, everyone that I knew loved Sunrise. It was the kind of calendar app with great design and integrations with a bunch of services. So we, as we'll see during the next few months in this roundup, Microsoft has been doing quite a few of these acquisitions and, kind of reimagining their portfolio of iOS apps. So, but I think we can trace back this trend to Sunrise. Yeah.
Yeah. And now look where they are, right? Integrating into Outlook. Like it's an interesting time for Microsoft, especially if you're an iOS user.
Yep.
So that wraps up February. So I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll get into March, which Federico, March was your month, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear you talk about that. This episode is brought to you by Braintree, code for easy online payments. If you're a mobile app developer, check out Braintree. Braintree is the payment solution used by companies like Uber, Airbnb, Hotel Tonight, Living Social, and Munchery. Braintree has made the payment experiences that you will use in these apps seamless. And now you can add a similar magical experience to your own app as well. They have excellent customer service and simple integration for developers. You can very easily get Braintree into your app so you can receive your payments quickly. Braintree has continuous support. They are always making their platform better, and they're always there for their customers and users to make sure that it's all good, everything's fine and dandy. They also have fast payouts as well, which means you'll be prepared as your company grows from your first dollar to your billionth. Braintree is also helping solve the problem of mobile cart abandonment by offering a best-in-class mobile checkout experience, and they make the payment experiences in some of the apps that you use seamless and magical. Now, you're able to add a similar experience to your own app with Braintree's full stack payment solution. This gives you support for all of the payment types that your customers might want. This includes PayPal, Apple Pay, Bitcoin, Venmo, card payment, and many, many more types, all with just that one single integration. It'll be with you and your customers across all platforms with the superior fraud protection that they have and their fantastic customer services and fast payouts. To learn more and for your first $50,000 in transactions fee-free, go to BraintreePayments.com/connected. Thank you so much to Braintree for their support of this show in 2015. Federico, this one's on you.
So aside from the Pebble Time raising $20 million on Kickstarter,
which is a big thing. I was like, I wanted to just put that in there because that was a crazy amount of money they made.
yeah, it was a lot of money. How's Pebble doing these days, by the way?
They're doing so well anymore.
I'm sorry for the guys. Some great people are working at the company. But yeah, as we've said, before, I don't know if there's a place between the Apple Watch and the Android Wear smartwatches for this kind of platform.
They have to go all in on Android, I think, is the way that they continue.
They have to. So aside from Pebble news on Kickstarter, March for me was the month of two things.
It was a whirlwind, man.
Yeah, it was crazy. And it's definitely I think March and September are the highlight of my year. But in March, I published the health story of how the iPhone helped me get back in shape after cancer and treatments. And it was an article that I had kept in the back of my mind for at least 2 years. And I didn't want to publish it, or I didn't want to write it, not just because it was heavy, to kind of reminisce and kind of look at all the old pictures and talk about the process of going through chemo and getting back in shape. I also didn't want to give the impression that I was looking for easy page views on the website, because it's a kind of topic, the story of a guy who went through chemo and now he's using technology to get back in shape, and now he's using, the disease as a sort of to catch attention. And I didn't want to do that. But then, my girlfriend really, and you guys, you all pushed me to just write about the truth and write about my story, that I shouldn't be ashamed of my story, or I shouldn't be afraid of other people's judgment on how I use that or how I talk about that. And so I published this article, and I spent, in retrospect, I only spent 3 weeks to produce a story that was about 2 years or 3 years of my life. And I've always been like that. I keep articles in my mind for a long time, and then in like a couple of weeks I write them all and it's all done. But what I didn't expect was not just the success of the article itself in terms of page views, because I don't necessarily care about that, but it was the feedback that I got. And I got hundreds of people sending me emails about their story, and that was also possibly heavier than the article itself, because when you hear, I heard from people who had kids with cancer, and I heard from, brothers and sisters, sons, daughters, all types of stories from Europe, from America, from Brazil, and it was definitely both awesome and heavy to realize I have people reading this story, but there's so many other people in a much, much worse scenario than me. So that was heavy, and it was heavy and great at the same time, and it was so weird. But what I didn't really expect was getting a tweet from Phil Schiller from Apple
Yeah, man.
to the article, and that was the point where like the snowball effect kind of began. And so Schiller tweeted an article to the link to the article, and it got me quite a few more people on the site. And then the next day, or maybe 2 days later, I got an invitation from Apple to go to the event in San Francisco, and so I. So in 2 days, I had to arrange everything, and I went to San Francisco, and I went to the March event, March 9th at the Yerba Buena Center, and I stood there and watched the keynote where Apple introduced the new MacBook, so the one that leaked in January, ResearchKit, which is an open source initiative to allow developers to build apps for medical research. And of course, the reintroduction to the public of the Apple Watch. And I also went in the demo area. I tried the Apple Watch, tried the MacBook, and finally got to meet quite a few handsome people, such as Jason, Serenity, and Renee, of course, and so many other friends that I never met in real life. And it was all over in 48 hours. So I went there, flew back, and I was in London, then back in Rome. I couldn't meet Mike in London at that time, but see. We'll see in the future. And I was back in Rome, and the first thing I did, I'm kind of ashamed of myself, but the first thing I did was, I was so hungry, I went to a McDonald's to eat, because it was like
in
11.
Rome.
Yeah, it was 11 at night, and I didn't know where else to go. I didn't want to cook at pasta, and I was just so exhausted. And we went with my girlfriend and a friend of mine. We went to McDonald's, and it was all over in 2 days. So
It was beautiful. Do you remember TG Travels?
I remember hashtag Teach Travels.
That was
your...
one of the most fun days I've had on the internet, because I was so excited that you were in San Francisco and you were in the event. And obviously what happens quite a lot is, like, journalists will tweet pictures of them in line.
Yes.
And I took it upon myself to search for you in every image, and then kind of I was tweeting about like a crazy person, and then people started jumping on board and sending me pictures that they'd found of you in them. And that was such a great day, and it was just a great time that you got that invite. And that really made March special for me. Like, the event was fun. There was so much announced, right? We got the MacBook, the Apple Watch, and all the other stuff that you mentioned. But you being there and it being your first event and your first time in America really made it a very special time, I think.
Yeah, I also ate pasta in San Francisco at an Italian restaurant. It was pretty good, you know? Renee and then Serenity took me there. It was a great place. And I'm still thinking about that day. You know, I was in San Francisco. You remember, Mike, when I surprised you on a podcast with Jason?
Oh, God.
You remember your reaction?
Oh, that was horrible.
We should have an audio clip in here, Mike.
Was the best kept secret of the day was that Federico Viticci arrived in San Francisco today to partake in the Apple event. He got an invite. We'll talk about that on Connected. That's a whole big story. I'm looking forward to Connected this week, actually.
Or we can talk about it now if you want, Mike.
Oh,
Hello.
oh my God, that really scared me. Hi, Federico.
Hi, Mike. How are
What
you?
are you doing there?
A podcast, obviously.
I'm
How
doing a
long have you
podcast.
been there?
The whole time.
The whole time.
Oh.
And I surprised you during Upgrade, and I was at the Macworld offices. It was such a crazy series of emotions and events. Definitely one of the two highlights of my year.
Should we move on to April?
Yeah.
This only got 2 bullet points.
Yeah,
It's kinda
April
sad.
wasn't a big month. In April, Becoming Steve Jobs was released, the book, which is the only book I've read this year. So congratulations to Becoming Steve Jobs for taking that title for me. And also the Apple Watch went on sale. and started a trend for Apple of really weird ship dates for the year.
Yeah, that's one of the themes
Yeah.
of this year. What's going on with the ship dates?
Nobody knows. Like this was so. What was going on? It was just that people were ordering some watches, and they were going to take months, right? Like that was
Yes.
the big thing. It was different SKUs of the watch were taking much longer to arrive than maybe like the sports and stuff like that. But even different colors of the sport bands were taking longer.
Very quickly, people making an order in April got a July ship date.
Yeah.
So that was weird, of course.
Yeah, that was super strange.
And it's strange from a company that's run by the old operations guy.
Yeah, maybe the problem was there was nobody looking after it, right? Maybe it'll be fine now.
It was before Jeff Williams got promoted.
No one was looking at operations because Cook was gone.
I guess what do we chalk this up to now? Just the issues in manufacturing. That's the
Yeah.
only thing I can think of, that they couldn't get them in bulk fast enough. But I know mine shipped pretty quickly, but a lot of people waited. Just like you guys said, for seemingly weeks and weeks and weeks.
What was even stranger, and I think we almost forgot at this point, but remember, the Apple Watch couldn't be bought in a store initially. It was
Yeah.
only available online. You couldn't go to an Apple retail store to.
But they
to-
did
to-
the try-ons, which was a really interesting thing to do. You could go in and try on the product, which was the way it should have been done. But the fact that you couldn't then place an order or pick one up for months was really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were trying to spin this as we want to change our retail mechanism to only be online, and you go to the store just to get a try on or a demo, and they got so many articles and people from the press saying that it wasn't really a good move, and eventually, like a couple of months later, they said, yeah, well, now we are okay with the shipments, so we can provide units to the Apple retail stores. You can walk in and buy an Apple Watch. I don't know if it was like Apple recognizing the mistake or if maybe it was a plan all along, but definitely, people having to make an appointment to try on a watch, but then being unable to buy it directly in a retail store. It was definitely strange. And I had to buy an Apple Watch from Germany, thanks to
Oh
remember that
Yeah, I remember.
you didn't remember. So I bought an Apple Watch from Germany, using the courtesy of a friend of mine, and then I paid like €100 to get it, to get the overnight from Germany to Rome, Italy, with DHL. And DHL worked beautifully, by the way. So I got my black sport Apple Watch from the German retail store, and
Yeah, I remember your card being like waiting to be charged.
Yeah. There was an issue with the credit card, but then it all worked out. I called like a free number from Apple to confirm that my credit card was okay. And the guy told me, "You're the first person to call in about the Apple Watch today." I was like, "Oh yeah, nice."
First of, I'm sure, thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah, the try-on experience really was something the stores really haven't done anything like that before.
No.
You went in, and lots of things at the Apple Store are by appointment now, but I wrote a blog post about my experiences. A lot of the people did, and it was really great. It was like a hands-on, one-on-one time with someone who clearly had been trained and knew the product. And I think a lot of things about the Apple Watch are experimental to Apple, including the retail experience.
Yep.
And even now, you walk in the store and it's they're still on that table where they're sunk under the glass, and it still feels like a very high-end experience when you go in to look at or buy an Apple Watch. And I think that that's intentional and done by design on Apple's part, but it is very different than, it's the same store you can go in and buy a phone case with Apple Pay on your phone and never talk to a human being. Like, it's sort of the far other end of that experience in retail.
Yeah, I think the try-on was one of the best retail experiences, or probably the best retail experience I've had this year. Like, it was great to go in and try it on. And I took Adina and she loved it as well. That's why she ended up buying one, because when she tried it on, she just loved it. And that was a really good idea, and I think that in an ideal world you would be buying them immediately. Like as Federico said, I completely agree. That was a complete spin about them trying to change their retail, the way that they work. They just didn't have enough of them to put them in stores, because now you can do it. I think it was purely they were just trying to find a way to hide the fact that they couldn't get enough of them made for whatever reason that ended up being.
So May, we saw a couple of things. We saw the new the MacBook Pros got revved with the Force Touch trackpad. It was in the 13 first, and then the 15, which is the machine that I'm talking through right now. We saw Microsoft. I don't know if this went anywhere yet. Allowed developers to bring Android and iOS apps to Windows 10 devices. Not if you use Swift yet. Spotify announced support for video and podcast. Which again, I'm not sure how much of that's gone on yet.
Yeah.
This is my favorite thing about May, is so many things that happened in May have just led to nothing.
Yeah, basically.
Maybe include the next one. Vox acquires Recode, and now, of course, they've intermingled their staff a little bit. And then I think the most interesting is the last one, Johnny Ive being promoted to Chief Design Officer, which was like a super weird article in the Telegraph. Remember they
Written by
released it
Stephen
like
Fry.
Yeah, was it like on a weekend? Like it was like super late one night, or it was out of the news cycle.
But it wasn't like late in the night or whatever. It was UK time. That was what was weird about it to Americans. Is it happened in the UK morning, so it was in the middle of the night for you guys.
Yeah, Americans don't understand any other time besides America time.
Well, I mean that's unusual because Apple is traded and based here. Like,
yeah, details.
Mm-hmm.
So, details about the release aside, I mean, it's super interesting news for a couple of reasons, right? This set off a firestorm of speculation that he was on his way out, and this was some sort of way for Apple to restructure the organization beneath him to take over a lot of his stuff so he could exit in a couple of years. There's also the argument that he's focusing on more big picture stuff, like in the 60 Minutes thing just a couple weeks ago, talking about his involvement with the campus project, and maybe that sort of thing lent itself to this sort of promotion. I don't think he's on his way out, but I do think that it is a clear indication of just how much power he and his team have within the company now.
I mean, eventually he's going to leave, right? So you've got to start succession planning at some point. And I think that this is an element of succession planning, but not necessarily based on the fact that Johnny wants to go. But you've got a plan, right? Like they had a plan for Steve. You've got to have a plan for Johnny. And part of that plan is building up a couple of individuals who can become the next Johnny Ive, right? That just seems like a sensible thing to me, but I can see why it would put some people on edge.
Yeah, there was a lot of speculation about, Johnny is about to leave Apple because other Apple people have done this before. They got this fancy promotion and then like a year later they left Apple. Considering Johnny's passion for the automotive industry and car design, I think Johnny is staying at Apple and he's working on the Apple car. And this promotion is just that, a promotion to kind of leave behind, or to other people, some day-to-day operations to focus more on the big picture design language of Apple and the next major products. And I don't see any subplot here.
Well, another thing that I see when I look at this is recognition for him.
Yeah, also.
To give him the title which matches his likely influence in the company. I think that obviously Johnny was working at a level much higher than a senior vice president in the decisions that he was making and how much his work and influence stretches. So I think part of it may have just been like a thank you for everything you do. Here is a C-level position to back up how important we think you are.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll see. June is the big month, Federico. What do we get?
So WWDC, and of course it's the month of Apple when they announce everything that's going to ship later in the year. And it's also the moment when basically I go into lockdown mode and I don't work on anything else for the next 3 months. Anyway, WWDC this year saw the introduction of iOS 9, OS X El Capitan, WatchOS 2, Apple Music, and as an aside, during the same WWDC week, Phil Schiller as a guest on John Gruber's The Talk Show. So, starting with iOS 9, it didn't bring a lot of major interface or functionality changes to the iPhone. It brought a bunch of improvements, new intelligence features for Siri and search, but not a lot of, at least not until 3D Touch with the iPhone 6s in the fall. iOS 9 that we saw at WWDC was more of an iPad-focused release. And on the iPad, we got multitasking with slide over and split view. We got new keyboard functionalities. We got some design changes for Notification Center and other system features. And we got support for external keyboard shortcuts finally. And Apple really wanted to stress how iOS 9 was the beginning of the iPad's future in a way for people who work on an iPad as a computer. And I remember during the keynote, I was at home watching the live stream, and the moment that I think Craig Federighi brought up iPad multitasking, I got like 50 tweets from people like saying, "No, look at the iPad, look what's going on."
The room that we were in watching it, we were in the room that the release notes guys put together, and like just everybody started talking about you. Right? It's just like, well, this is what he wants, so
yeah,
it's the Federico time, everyone.
And so OS X El Capitan. Now I'm gonna need Steven's help here, and also Mike. It's basically an like a snow leopard release for Yosemite.
Well, I guess kind of, right? Like it was kind of like what they said about iOS as well. Security and stability was one of the key things of both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, they did add some forward-facing stuffs, but not, to your point, not a huge update to OS X, which I think is kind of the case these days now that you're on an annual cycle that, for the most part, things are going to be a little bit slower.
Yeah. I mean, iOS 9 for the iPhone wasn't a huge update either. Like, there really wasn't a lot. And, like, the features that they put in there, I mean, I barely even know that they exist. Like, the intelligent assistant stuff, it's like, that could be turned off, and I don't think I'd know the difference. I'm sorry to say. But that's, kind of how it is for me. And I turned off, like, all the news stuff and things like that. I just don't want to see it. So I don't even get a lot of the suggestions. And I actually find that the smarter Spotlight on the iPhone quite frequently just doesn't understand what I'm asking it to do. Like if it is impossible for me to get the Amazon app via searching in Spotlight. I can type the word Amazon and it doesn't come up. It feels like to a point that Apple have hard-coded it in. Like, it's like, how could you not be finding it? The app is called Amazon. Like, what is the problem here?
There's a Cold War there, buddy.
It seems like
no
it.
good.
Yeah, I'm finding that either with the Spotlight search or with Siri, Apple's intelligence features still don't understand the same commands that I ask Google Voice Search with the Google app. So,
but there are things that it does that are fantastic, right? Where, like, for example, all of the apps that I have that have integrated Spotlight search, it's brilliant. Like, I can find Google documents via Spotlight search.
So you ended up using Spotlight search quite a bit.
Yeah. My main way of interacting with things on my iPhone is searching for them, especially with the iPad Pro and the keyboard, because I just hit the command space and it takes me out of the current app and straight into Spotlight, so I could just find the next thing that I want. But it's just not as good as it could be, and there are some things that are super inconsistent. Like, for example, I wanted to call my mum and I typed the word mum in and it wouldn't give me a contact. It gave me somebody called Amy. Like, I was like, I don't even understand how you got here. Like, what are you doing? Like, it needs to be a lot better, but I do use it a lot. And apps that have integrated the Spotlight sort of search stuff, I find that to work more consistently than searching for apps. But yeah, that's kind of my feeling. This has been on my mind for weeks, and I've been meaning to talk about it, so I'm pleased that we got to touch on it.
I wanted to say that in the end, I'm the opposite. I find myself launching apps, but I thought that I would love it. But I don't search for files and documents much with Spotlight on iOS 9. And really, going into iOS 9, I thought that was going to be a major change for the way that I access content, really. And maybe the problem is I should kind of call my sources and kind of manage the apps and data that ends up in my Spotlight. Maybe the problem is it's too crowded in there. I don't know, but I haven't found myself reliably and consistently going to Spotlight to say, oh, I want to open this note or I want to open this document. I still open the app and then search for the document or anything else. Maybe just a problem of habit, and eventually it'll grow on me. Anyway, WWDC also WatchOS 2. After the much criticized debut of WatchKit apps with Apple Watch in April, Apple announced a new version of the watch operating system, debuting a new name with the also much criticized lowercase watch before uppercase OS. And WatchOS 2 brought almost native apps to the Apple Watch, allowing for deeper interoperability between a network on the iPhone and the Apple Watch, and a way to load app content natively on the device. And in theory, it should have been a major change for the platform. And the reality is, and I'm pretty sure this is not just my personal impression, is that WatchOS 2 hasn't set the Watch App Store on fire. And I mean, I've seen so many apps not release WatchOS 2 updates, and so many developers still saying, yeah, I wanna wait until maybe next year to see if I should really bring my original Watch app to WatchOS 2 or WatchOS 3. So many developers are kind of rushed to have an Apple Watch app ready for the device launch, and maybe then they kind of didn't upgrade to WatchOS 2 at all. And maybe just me, but I'm not using apps on my Apple Watch that much. I'm just using it as a watch and notifications, time, that kind
and complications,
of stuff.
Man. Love me some complications. It's like I was saying this on Upgrade yesterday. The Apple Watch for me is not a device that I go to get any information. It is just a device that presents me with information, and I'm happy with that. And WatchOS 2, the complication stuff, that made me happy. Like, I use Fantastical and I use Carrot Weather, and they are exactly what I want that Apple's ones don't give me. And so I'm very happy with them.
Yeah, it could be that the apps that I use don't have a complication yet, but maybe in the future, when To-Do gets a complication, maybe it'll grow on me a lot.
Yeah.
We'll see. Apple Music. I don't know if you remember, but this is the reason why a lot of people didn't like Apple's WWDC 2015 keynote, because it was so long with the final Apple Music segment that featured, of all people, Eddie Q and Drake, the rapper.
Well, it was bad. I mean, I know that you thought it was okay.
Yeah.
And that was just, that was an argument we had a long time ago. But a lot of people didn't like it. I didn't like it. But I saw your point at the time. I still see your point now. But my feeling was that part of the keynote sucked. It sucked. It had Iovine missing his jokes. We had Q dancing. We had Drake coming out to talk about something he wasn't supposed to talk about.
But he had a cool Apple jacket.
He did have a cool Apple jacket.
Really cool jacket, really.
And it went on for too long, and it was a shame because, I mean, we don't need to get into this. I like Apple Music. I know there's been a ton of problems for a lot of people, but it does what I need it to do, and I like it. But, I know it's destroyed many people's music libraries, but
yeah.
Me and Federico, speaking for you, Federico, I wasn't in the place where I had a music library to destroy. I've been a streamer for a long time.
Oh, yeah, it's really simple. I think me and you are the same. When we want to listen to music, either we get a recommendation that's already there, so we just stop play and we're like, okay, done. Or I think of an album, I'm like, I want to listen to the new Arctic Monkeys. I just search, tap play, done. Like, we don't have anything to manage. It's either you get me a recommendation or I'm searching for something. And at least for me, Apple Music does that quite well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree completely.
Schiller on the talk show, I think that was a kind of major event. At least if you were on Twitter, because it was live, I wasn't really expecting to see, an Apple senior vice president on the talk show with John Gruber. And when John introduced Phil Schiller during the live stream, I wasn't there, so I was watching. A lot of people on Twitter were like freaking out, and because they thought it was a joke, right? When there was like a couple of seconds after Gruber said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Phil Schiller," and it was not coming out on stage, and you could hear the audience kind of saying, "Oh, like laughing and maybe realizing it was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. It was the real, it was the real Schiller, and it was a great discussion. Very good questions from Gruber and very honest answers, I would say, from Schiller about a bunch of topics like iOS stability and 60 gigs iPhones still being sold. And it's really, if you haven't watched the episode video, go check it out because it's totally worth it. Two last news from June: Google Photos and Taylor Swift against Apple. So let's start from Google Photos. It's a new service from Google that organizes your photos and allows you to search for events and search for content inside your photos thanks to machine learning. So Google offers you unlimited and free storage for high quality photos, which is not the best or maximum quality. You gotta pay for that. But for most people, 16 megapixels, I think, they're more than enough to store your photos for free. And because Google has some crazy computers and algorithms looking into your pictures, you can then go to the Google Photos app and type like cat pictures and it'll show you cats. Or you can go even crazier and say desks or specific items such as boats or computer on a desk. So you can combine these search queries and then you can you can find these pictures. You can for example, a few weeks ago I was looking for Christmas decorations because I wanted to see my old pictures with the Christmas tree, and sure enough Google gave me pictures from the past 3 to 4 years of my Christmas tree and decorations inside the house. Or you can search for tiny dog, which is my favorite search query because it shows me my girlfriend's dog, which is really tiny. And so, this is kind of amazing for me. I'm using Google Photos as a free backup for my iCloud for library. And it's okay. In many ways, I prefer Google Photos to the Apple Photos app. If anything, because the search stuff is just downright amazing. And I also like how, at least I know it's possible with iCloud, but it's easier for me, at least the way that I understand it. You can create a shared album in Google Photos. Then you can invite people and everyone can upload pictures to that folder. I know that it's possible with iCloud. I just find the interface easier to use on Google Photos. And also, I want to mention there's an assistant feature that creates like animated GIFs or short videos or collages for you.
My favorite thing that it does is creates albums of trips that I take.
Yeah.
It recognizes I've gone somewhere. It recognizes that I've taken a bunch of photos over a period of time, and it suggests, should I put these into a little album for you? I have a weird problem with duplicates on Google Photos. I think it's because of the way I have the sync set up, which is kind of strange on my iPhone. It's like I have everything upload via my Mac, so when I open it on my iPhone, it's like, we can see these pictures, but these pictures aren't synced, and it's looking at my kind of photo library on my phone.
Right.
But I know that what's actually in Google is just one image. It's just the phone UI is a bit upset about it all. But I don't use, what I use Google Photos for is a search. And it's just all my photos are there and they're there for free and I can search for them. That's what I use it for. And then I still have all of my main photos living in Dropbox. But it is a fantastic search function.
Yeah, it's really replaced Carousel for me, where if I want to look for something that's not synced to my phone as an album, that's where I go now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, Taylor Swift against Apple Music. The issue here was that Apple announced a free 3-month trial for Apple Music. And during that trial period from starting in at the end of June until the end of September, their original plan was to not pay royalties to artists on Apple Music. Taylor Swift, rightfully so, got upset because, you want to offer a trial. It's not my problem if you don't want to pay me. You want to give your customers a free trial, but we're still making the music that you're offering for free. And so she wrote a blog post against Apple on a Sunday. And I remember because I was at the beach back then. And sure enough, the note started spreading online. And by the end of the day, I think, Eddie Q replied to Taylor Swift publicly on Twitter and to a bunch of press outlets. And they changed their minds. They said, yes, you're right. We're going to pay artists during the 3-month free trial of Apple Music. So all's well that ends well, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Yeah.
It was a good story, and it cemented Taylor Swift's complete dominance of the entire planet.
Yeah, especially this year was the year of Taylor Swift.
No doubt. July, Apple released an iPod Touch of an A8 chip to calls of question marks from everybody. Apple Music launched in July. My favorite piece of news for the month was that Stephen finally went independent.
Hey.
We got
Yay.
Apple Pay in the UK, my second favorite piece of news for the year. I love Apple Pay. I use it all the time. We had the whole Safari is the new IE conversation.
Yeah, I remember that. How did that turn out?
I don't know. This was the month where everybody decided that they hated mobile websites.
I guess why?
Yeah,
Especially iOS.
especially on iOS. We'll get back to that in another month, I think. And one of my favorite things that happened in July was Slack launched emoji reactions. I love
Really?
the emoji reactions. in
You
Slack.
love them.
I use them all the time.
I like the idea. Maybe it's the implementation that's a bit slow, or maybe there's something I
It's
Don't-
way better on the Mac now. You can just hover and click, and I think they're gonna try and make it better on iOS. It should. Be
Oh
better
yeah,
on
I
iOS.
see. I'm on the Mac now. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
much better.
So it's not much nicer on the Mac, but I think they're gonna have to, and they will work on it on iOS. So Apple Pay was probably one of the biggest things for me that's happened this year. I mean, I use it constantly. Wherever I can, I do, and Apple Pay is so. Or contactless payment is just everywhere here, so it's just so easy to use it. It's more rare for me now to not be able to use Apple Pay somewhere than it is for me to be able to use it. So I'm very happy with that. But, can't go bury in the lead. Stephen, you've been independent now for like 6 months. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's really been good. I was thinking a lot about this. Sort of, the end of the year, you always reflect, and writing that post in July was really crazy. And I think the three of us probably were talking before I published it, just like freaking out, because it's one thing to like, I'd already quit my job at this point. I actually had quit my job or had given notice several weeks before. And I was like, okay, it's time to like announce, like make the big like public push. And I was more nervous about that than actually leaving. It's sort of strange, but it's gone really well. Relay's been successful. The writing and stuff that I do has been successful, and it's really great. And I feel like the bumpy like introduction to this of just like figuring out like what does it look like to work at home when you have a family, and like all that stuff is really sort of settled down now, and I can just focus on work and get it done, and then when it's time for work to be over, go and focus on family stuff. And I feel like I'm finally kind of hitting a good pattern there, and it's taken some work to get there. It's been much harder than I thought it would be, but overall I'm very happy and very excited to be able to do what I love and pay the bills with it. So, woohoo.
Good. And the all of the mobile stuff kicked off here because obviously people were using Safari content blockers at this point in beta because the iOS beta was out. So this is where, like, I think one of the places it started was a criticism of iMore, which I think then stretched out to The Verge, and then it got picked up by a bunch of other places and started a chain of events that will take us all the way up until September. So we'll touch on that again in September.
Mm-hmm.
Right, let's take a break and get into August. This week's episode is brought to you by Text Expander from Smile. If you're ever in the situation where you're typing the same sentences, phrases, or even words on a regular basis, you should be using Text Expander. It will save you time and effort by expanding short abbreviations into frequently used text and pictures. Stephen, I'm going to jump on you right now. I didn't tell you I was going to do this. What do you love about Text Expander?
For me, I think like a lot of people who get work done using a computer, I have a lot of repetitive stuff that I do, right? So stuff that happens each week or each month that is just part of the way that I work, the way that my job works in these repeatable timeframes. And so there are things that I need to type or forms I need to fill out on a regular repeating basis. And instead of going through and doing it manually every time, Text Expander can just go in and take care of stuff for me. So one thing I do a lot is, for instance, is I type our PO box for Relay just all the time, and it's got a bunch of numbers in it and I can't ever remember what it is. And so I've got it in TextExpander, where just with a couple keystrokes, I can expand it into a form. If we're filling out paperwork for an advertiser or we're ordering something and they need a mailing address, it's all super fast, and it's about taking the edges off of stuff that I do all the time to let me work faster. And time is money, and TextExpander gives me both back.
You can even sync the snippets that you create amongst your multiple devices. You can store them on iCloud Drive or Dropbox. This means that they're going to be with you everywhere on your multiple Macs, but it can also be on your iOS devices too. They have Smile has an iOS app for TextExpander, which will help you sync your snippets of a bunch of apps that support TextExpander natively, like Omni Outliner, Day One, Fantastical, Drafts, Launch Center Pro, Editorial, and many, many more. And Smile have even built their own custom keywords so you can use your TextExpander snippets in any app on iOS. TextExpander 5 for the Mac costs $44.95. Upgrades are available for $19.95 for existing users, and it's free to those who purchased on January the 1st, 2015. TextExpander 5 has a new look and feel. It has a new way to suggest abbreviations to you for things that you type frequently, and it's so awesome. You can find out more by going to smilesoftware.com/connected. Please note that TextExpander 5 requires Yosemite and is ready for El Capitan, and TextExpander for iOS is available on the App Store for iPhone and iPad. Thank you so much to Smile for their continued support of this show throughout 2015. We love Smile, and I think that they love us too. Stephen, August.
August is generally a quiet time in our circles, but a couple things of note. First, we discovered, or I would say Federico discovered, BlaBlaCar.
When I was going through the notes, I cannot believe how long ago that was. It felt like it was just a couple of weeks ago. We've been talking about this since August.
Yes, we did. I remember clearly and very dearly the day that a friend of mine explained BlaBlaCar to me.
And I remember very dearly the story that you told.
Yep, and we have so that'll look into our relationship. I have a picture of the mascot guy that sometimes I just randomly terrorize you guys with.
No, he sends me this picture basically on a weekly basis almost.
Well, I see it every time I open photos because we have that really old shared photo stream.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's always there. Always there.
It's the last
looking at
photo
me.
in there.
Yep.
It's just a little emotional terrorism every time you open photos. Google restructured and became Alphabet. Of course, big news that I think we're going to be seeing the results of for years to come. And then lastly, but definitely the most exciting, at least to us, is that Relay FM was profiled in TechCrunch. Really great article that we continue to see benefits from. It was really great to have that coverage, and very exciting to send that link out to my friends and family. Like, look, my job is real.
Look how important I am. One of my favorite things about that is the story was we didn't know when the story was going to be published, and it was published just as we began recording an episode of this show, and I couldn't concentrate for like 20 minutes. That was fun.
Yeah, it was really awesome, and I still point people there from time to time, and it was just it was nice to see what we've worked so hard for being recognized elsewhere.
Yeah. Federico.
Yes.
Let's go to September, which is another big event. You keep getting all the big ones.
Yeah. Whoever worked on this outline, but thank you for giving me March and September.
No worries.
So September was for me, I think, maybe the most important month of the year, because I had been working on two things for a very long time, and I was timing them with announcements and events from Apple. So from an Apple perspective, September was the month of the Apple Fall event when they introduced the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus, the iPad Pro, and the new Apple TV with tvOS and the new Apple TV App Store. And during this event, we saw the new devices. Of course, the iPhone 6s is not a redesign, but an improvement on the iPhone 6 from 2014 with new features such as faster Touch ID, 3D Touch, much improved camera, and a lot faster. And the iPad Pro was the bigger iPad that we were expecting. We were not expecting the iPad Pro to be announced in the same event of the iPhone and Apple TV.
Not everyone was. One
not
person
everyone
did.
was, and this is the as you said, Mike. This is the crown jewel of the Mike Was Right movement, I would say. And the iPad Pro was, of course, part of the same event, and it's a bigger iPad, and I think it's the iPad that we're all using now, and it's a bigger screen, Apple Pencil, bunch of accessories. iOS 9 multitasking is truly meant for this device.
We didn't do this in follow-up, but still no Google Docs. Kills me every day. Makes it worse and worse and worse.
Still no Google Docs. I think at some point, Mike, you will have to consider something else. But
no, they're going to do it. They're definitely going to do it.
Sure,
I'm very confident. Well, because Google Drive... Okay, I'm not getting into this.
Okay. September, also, iOS 9 and OS X El Capitan are released. And this is for me the key point of the month. So since June, I had been working on my first real iOS review. So for the past 5 years of Mac Stories, I had always done some type of coverage of a new version of iOS, but it was never a full review. It was always a story or an article about a specific angle or a specific feature. And instead this year, with all the the changes to the website and my focus on the iPad and iOS, I wanted to go all in and do a full review. And it was, when I started in June, it was definitely not the type of effort that I imagined it would be. By the end of those 2 months and a half, I was physically and psychologically exhausted. And I had been working on this crazy 50,000 word review. And when I was done, I realized that I needed to time the release of this review, not just with Apple releasing iOS, but with my other initiative for September, which was the launch of Club Mac Stories, a membership to gain access to exclusive additional Mac Stories content. So we hit a bunch of delays and technical issues with getting the club set up on the website. And we basically got to the beginning of September, and I had a feeling that I needed to launch the club a week before iOS 9. I obviously didn't want to do it during the week of iOS 9. I just knew that I wanted to have a few days ahead of publishing my iOS 9 review, because I wanted to offer the review as an ebook to members. So we chose to launch the club just a few days before iOS 9 was released to the public. And in looking back, it's such a blur to me, the way that we managed to finish getting the club ready for the website and finalizing my review, launching the pagination layout on the website, putting together the ebook version. I cannot remember how we did it. I just know that it was done in time. And for me, I mean, I was looking back at the stats of the website yesterday, and it's the iOS 9 review. It's the most read article of this year on Mac Stories, and it makes me really happy.
That's good.
Yeah, and it makes me really happy because I worked really hard on it, and I my sleep schedule, my entire schedule was all destroyed. Basically, it was all weird and unhealthy for many weeks, but I'm happy because it is the article I'm most proud of, and it is the story that I feel like I've been working for 6 years to get to that point, to be able to say I wrote a review of an operating system, and it's basically an ebook, and it's here. And the club has become the feedback has been amazing, and the financial and the I would say the feedback also from people has been totally worth it, and it's become basically the second the second model for Mac Stories, and looking into 2016, I'm planning a bunch of new stuff, and so it's gonna be fun. So aside from what I did on the website, it was the month of Apple in many ways for so many releases. iOS 9, the OS 10 El Capitan didn't come out until October, I think.
Mhm.
So OS 10 El Capitan was not in September. But with iOS 9 and WatchOS 2, it was so many. It's always difficult to keep track of all these news and releases from Apple when they occur on the same day. But I remember that there was a problem with WatchOS 2. You guys remember this? It was like delayed for a few
Yeah.
days. Yeah.
There was something severely wrong, right? And they had
Yes.
to pull it.
Yes.
Like literally the 11th hour.
Yeah, and there was something wrong, and it came out like the week after. But I would say that aside from iOS 9 multitasking and the major change on the iPad, I would say that on the iPhone, the big story was content blockers. And so this technology that allows users to install basically Safari extensions to remove certain types of content from web pages when used in Safari and Safari View Controller. And of course, by certain types, most people mean ads and trackers from web pages, so you don't see advertisement. You're not being tracked by scripts that require a few seconds to execute and that basically make web pages heavier in terms of megabytes transferred from the server to your device. And I had installed the content blocker during the beta of iOS 9, and I dedicated an entire section of my iOS 9 review to content blockers because I saw the net benefit of being able to save several megabytes each week and to browse the web much faster. But I would say that in our little corner of Twitter and the internet, the big news was Marco Arment made a content blocker based on.
I think it stretched a little bit bigger than our corner of the internet, though. I mean,
it
was number one on the App Store.
It started out as as a sort of. I don't think Marco expected the content blocker to be so popular. So he made but in hindsight, it should have. Of course, it was popular. Peace was the name of the app. Was a content blocker based on Ghostery technology. So Ghostery, for those unaware, is probably the most popular ad blocker on OS 10, and it lets you block not only ads and banners, but also and with a special focus, I would say, on web pages that track you across the web. And so all these little JavaScript and other types of scripts that publishers use to track your browsing habits and preferences. And so by licensing the Ghostery database, Peace became effectively the most powerful and popular content blocker on the App Store. So it jumped to the first spot on the top charts. And basically the tech press went crazy.
The internet kind of opened up and exposed all of its badness for a couple of hours on every single side, on all sides, from readers, users, journalists, podcasters. Everyone kind of showed a side to themselves which might upset other people, right? Everybody had their opinions, and it really became like a hellscape for like a day or two. And and that led many people. I mean, I felt really kind of burnt out from the internet for like a couple of weeks. It was what eventually led to me taking like a whole week away from Twitter sometime this year. And the way that it affected Marco being kind of the figurehead of all of it. He ended up being like the de facto person who was ad blocker guy. So he pulled Peace. That was the big story. I think he pulled his ad blocker Peace from the App Store, and everybody got a refund. And Marco wrote a really great blog post about why he didn't want to do it and why it didn't feel good to him. That ended up becoming another big story that the tech press all seemed to love so dearly. But now, I mean, and one of the reasons I want to talk about this is we look back at it now, nobody talks about ad blockers anymore. Like, whether they're in use or not, I don't know, but no one's talking about them. No one's gone out of business yet. Like, it doesn't really feel like it had the effect that people expected it was going to. Or if there is an effect, it's going to be much longer than what we expected. Nothing exploded.
I read an article on Neiman Lab a few weeks ago about the mobile ad blocking apocalypse hasn't arrived yet. And it talks about like a lot of popular websites are seeing mobile ad blocking in terms of 1 to 7% of their readers. So it's more of a problem on the desktop, really, because ad blockers have been around for years on desktop computers. And even if you look at the App Store top charts, for free or paid apps, the last time I looked, there's no content blocker in sight. So it seems to me like a lot of tech people like us installed a content blocker back in September, left it enabled, but that's just a niche of the millions and billions of iOS users and people who read popular blogs or websites like the New York Times or The Verge, iMore, CNET, all these popular websites with a lot of advertisements. It definitely, I really didn't like the way that a lot of people reacted to Marco's decision to pull Peace from the App Store, and I ended up unfollowing a bunch of people really, and blocking some because of their reaction on Twitter, and it kind of the reason why it made me so upset. It was because we can poke fun at each other and every day, but a lot of people are so jaded and so cynical. They don't understand there's another person on the other side of the Twitter stream. And in this case, Marco was just a guy who made an app using technologies made available by Apple. And in the end, the kind of reaction that he got, it was just awful from so many sides. And he decided to be done with it. And thankfully, Apple made an exception and they issued refunds to everyone who bought Peace. And even at that point, not understanding why someone may not be willing to put himself so, in the spotlight for, and in front of so many negative people, not understanding that, how could you, and especially after reading the blog post from Marco and still making fun of him, at a personal level, so many people should really take a break from Twitter and trying to understand how human interactions work. But anyway, I mean, in the end, it all worked out. Again, we were all so upset. It was like the end of the world for everyone, for the App Store, for Marco, for Apple. And I'm not trying to discount the negative stuff that happened to Marco here, but from our side as commentators and as an audience,
it shook out to a whole lot of nothing. That's what ended up happening, right? It just all shook out, and then there was no aftermath.
Yeah, basically a couple of weeks later, we moved on to something else.
I don't even use a content blocker. Oh, I have one installed called Cookiebox that just blocks the EU cookie notifications.
Yeah,
that's all it does. I don't use an ad blocker. It just doesn't sit with me.
I use one blocker, and I use it because it's got these custom CSS rules, so it lets me modify the way that I look at some websites. And when I go to those websites on my Mac, and they're different because I don't have those CSS rules, it's so strange. Like, I'm not used to all these layouts and ads and banners and boxes and sidebars anymore. What's going on? But yeah, I think our story is similar to many other people. We installed the content blocker many months ago, and now it's buried in a folder on our iPhone, and we forgot about it. But anyway, September, man, it was crazy.
Brings us on to October. The Apple TV went on sale all of a sudden one morning without anybody knowing that it was going to happen.
The best type of release.
Yep, it's just like, oh, here we go. It's there now. That was that then, and then that went on sale, and people bought them or didn't. Twitter named Jack Dorsey their permanent CEO after a long back and forth.
Jack is back.
Jack is back, and you're going to be in trouble. The Relay FM app launched to the world. There were new iMacs and new smart peripherals that came out in October. The Steve Jobs movie, featuring somebody that Federico doesn't know, Mr. Michael Fassbender.
Who's the guy? Seriously?
Exactly. Who is that guy? That bombed at the box office, and Amazon stopped selling the Chromecast and the Apple TV.
Mm-hmm. Well, quite a month, I would say, Mike.
There was a lot of stuff that happened in October.
I think you meant Magic peripherals, not smart. You know?
I did mean Magic. Yeah, smart is iPad. Magic is the Mac.
Too many adjectives.
Yep. It's smart and Magic and powerful. I'm waiting for powerful mouse. That's what I'm looking
That's right.
for.
Well,
Power
they got rid of that when they moved to Intel. They're like, we're done with power. It's like that's not really a sentence you want to have said.
mouse. No more power. Woo.
Yeah, I mean, out of that, the Apple TV I think is what sticks with me.
Yeah, sure.
It's really become even more so than the previous one, just the way we watch TV. And yes, there are issues with it. Yes, it's sort of ridiculous. The remote app just now works and wasn't there on day one while all of us were running our crazy passwords. But overall, it's a huge improvement to what they had. And I think that with or without the over-the-top service coming, it's still for what it is as a box you plug into your TV to get internet stuff onto it. Really good, and I really like ours. And I hope that they can figure out the developer story. There's issues there. I hope that they continue to iterate on the first party stuff. There's still some Apple stuff that's a little weird in places, but overall, I think it's a really good platform for them to build on into the future. And the old one clearly wasn't. And so I'm excited about what it could bring.
Yeah, and about the movie, I don't want to repeat myself, but I mean, is it really a surprise that you use a guy no one knows and then the movie bombs?
No,
No,
you
don't say it.
doesn't know them.
Okay, whatever. You draw your own conclusions, people.
We're not going through this again. Michael
Sure.
Fassbender is a huge movie star.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
was so huge. The movie was a huge success.
Yeah, but they
I
also
think-
used Seth Rogen. They had Danny Boyle direct it and Aaron Sorkin write it. Like, on paper, this was a huge movie. However, nobody went to see it.
Oh, well, guess why?
It's nothing to do with Michael Fassbender.
Okay.
All right? We're not. I don't want to have this argument again with you.
No, because
Just because
people-
you don't know somebody doesn't mean that they're not a big
Yes,
star.
and some people made that clear to me and to us in emails. So I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend you, people and
You offend me.
listeners. No,
You're
no,
offending me.
Well, I don't want to offend you. I mean,
Boys.
I didn't know you took such pride in knowing Michael Fassbender before. I'm just saying, you know. Again, if you want to run a test, call my mom and ask about Michael Fassbender. And anyway,
A little bit of test.
let's
Yeah,
let's move
you're
on.
really kind of setting up the parameters of that test there, Federica.
Well, my mom or any other friend here. Anyway, please.
What we
move
know
on.
is Michael Fassbender is unknown in Italy. That's all we've come to establish. Maybe
Thank
Italy
you.
was the target market for the movie, and that's why it didn't work out.
Thank you, Mike.
Can you bring us back to something a bit happier, Stephen, for November?
Yeah, so we're coming up near to the present, and November, of course, is the iPad Pro release, which brought a couple of things. It brought Mike your review of the Apple Pencil, but much more adorably, the two of you guys finally met
Mm-hmm.
in person.
We didn't talk about Michael Fassbender at all.
I was expecting Mike to show up with a bunch of pictures and magazines with photos of Fassbender.
I bring him with me. I'm like, look, here he is.
Look, he's famous. See? No, it was all very lovely, and Mike
Yeah.
took care of me. He brought me from, we were on the tube. And then he paid for my ticket with Apple Pay. It was all very, very magical, to finally see and touch and hug Mike in real life. I almost couldn't believe it was real.
Well, I had to protect you and your precious cargo.
Yes, and so it was when I was back in Rome the same night. It all felt so far away, both in terms of not just location but in time. Like a couple of hours before, I was with Mike, and I was back home. Already
With the
working
device
on
of your dreams.
on this iPad Pro review, and man, it was crazy. It was so great to finally meet Mike, and of course we took a bunch of pictures, and every once in a while I still take a look at the photos. So lovely.
Well, I hope that 2016 brings two things. It brings more time that we spent together, and also brings the first meeting of you two. And I hope that it happens in San Francisco, California.
Me too.
So that's my big hope for 2016.
Yeah.
So Federico, do you want to round us out to the current month that we're in? What happened in December of 2015?
So the big news from Apple, as promised, Swift, the programming language from Apple, goes open source. It's available on GitHub, and not only is that kind of open source when people can see, and Apple is going all in with open source and Swift. They have a mailing list when they can discuss the improvements, reply to feedback from the developer community, and they open source. Now, I'm no programmer, so excuse my terminology, but they open sourced some parts of the programming language that people were not expecting to see. Like frameworks and libraries that, were kind of took the developer community by surprise. And not only that, but also Craig Federighi went on a bit of a press tour with interviews and a guest appearance on the talk show with John Gruber to talk about Swift going open source and what it means for Apple. And based on the first reactions that I've seen from people in the past few weeks, they all seem very positive. About the approach that Apple has taken with opening up Swift and kind of setting a roadmap for the evolution of the Swift programming language and the road towards Swift 3.0. I think it's should be the next major release. Also from this month, Sketch, the popular design tool for OS X, leaves the Mac App Store, citing the usual problems with Apple's Mac Store, such as a lack of trials, lack of integration between the developer side and the customer side. So, for example, no way to reply to reviews or to get in touch with the customer, no way to offer paid upgrades for existing customers who want to switch to a new version of the app. And it made quite a few headlines because Sketch was an Apple Design Award winner a few years before, and it's possibly one of the most popular apps for designers on OS X. And it once again started a discussion on the problems with the Mac App Store and, all the many ways in which Apple left the Mac App Store behind and Mac developers behind when compared to iOS developers and the iOS App Store. Apple also released, again, one morning you wake up, there's a new Apple product waiting for you. And this time it's a battery case. And so many people went crazy on Twitter that day because of the hump on the case.
Yeah, one of the things about the battery case, which is why I want it to be put in there, is it symbolizes another long-running theme of Apple this year, which is discussions about battery life. Mm-hmm. And this kind of really brought it all to a head where it was like, now even Apple is saying that the iPhone battery life could be better. So, it kind of is a way to sum up that conversation, I think.
Yeah, and the case, it's iPhone 6 and 6S only, not for the iPhone 6S Plus. And Apple's excuse seems to be, because there's no official statement, that if you want more battery, you go with the Plus model because it's bigger. But it's not the same, it's not the same as using a case, because this case gives you more hours of battery life, not just 1 hour or, maybe 2 hours that you can get with an iPhone 6S Plus. Anyway, a lot of people went crazy. We saw quite a few hot takes on many, many blogs about the design and Apple losing its way. So many hot takes. Apple losing its way, Apple design got boring, got ugly, Apple is doomed, and, the usual circles of people and comment, about Apple being doomed and Johnny Ive being Satan, essentially. Dropbox has killed, Mike, I'm sorry, has killed Carousel and Mailbox.
No, I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, yeah? So
Outlook is giving me a new Outlook on email.
Oh, wow. So for those who
pun bomb.
For those who don't know, 2015 has also been at least the second half has been the year of Mike and CGP Grey discussing their crazy email problems on Cortex, another show on Relay FM. And a very peculiar problem is that Mike has his own way to manage and respond to emails. So he wants to have certain features that were only available in Mailbox. And when Dropbox kind of abandoned Mailbox unofficially and then officially said, yeah, we're going to discontinue this product, Mike was really sad initially. And he went on a bit of a vision quest to understand what he wanted to use. And eventually he settled on Outlook, which I also use to manage my email on iOS. The main problem here, Mike, is that there's no Mac version of Outlook. So what is it that you're doing?
I'm using, I think a little bit begrudgingly, using AirMail, just because the Apple Mail app is horrific, and I won't take anybody telling me it's not. The thing is a nightmare. It's a disaster. So I'm using AirMail right now, and it does an okay job. It's fine.
It's no disaster.
But it's not as good as Outlook is on iOS, just flat out.
Yeah, and Outlook I also named as the runner-up of my iOS App of the Year. Such a fine job Microsoft is doing here. To circle back to Sunrise in February, Microsoft has now integrated Sunrise into Outlook. At least they have started the integration process. They said there were gonna be a full integration by the end of the year, but right now we've only seen basically some of the Sunrise design language being moved into Outlook and an announcement from Microsoft saying, yeah, we're gonna integrate Sunrise into Outlook with all the design touches, all the features and the views available for your calendar, the integrations with third-party services. But right now we've only started doing this. We've only started moving from Sunrise to Outlook and expect to see more. And we're still waiting to see more. But Outlook is really a fine product on the iPhone and iPad and Apple Watch too, because the one of the few big companies to fully support watchOS 2, all the new iOS 9 features, 3D Touch, iPad multitasking. Microsoft is really being being fast with updates, supporting new iOS features, and they're doing. If you ask me, they're doing much, much better than Google when it comes to fully embracing iOS and Apple Watch. I would say that the last major Apple news from the year would be Jeff Williams becoming COO of Apple, so taking on to the old Tim Cook role at the company, and Phil Schiller being promoted to be kind of in charge of the App Store. I don't know what kind of name they use.
It's difficult, and there was somebody who was mentioning this to me, and there is a school of thought that Schiller has had something bad happen to him because he's had marketing communications, taken away from him, and they have a new SVP in place doing it. I mean, I don't know what's good or bad, but like Schiller has a new job, and it doesn't seem like he did anything wrong, right? Like that they would take it away from him. Apple's advertising has been great, but they've gone through a little bit of a restructure again, and potentially what they want to do with the app stores are too big, right? So maybe he needs to, if they're going to give it to him, he needs to really take a full view on it. So that's just been a change. Schiller's role has changed. I don't know whether it's like promotion, demotion, or just like a sideways move. Who knows?
Yeah.
Not me.
And lastly, Mike, Steven, you guys want to talk about the Relay FM memberships.
Yeah, it was just a change that we made to our business, I think, towards the end of this year. We looked at what you were doing and what Jason was doing with Six Colors, and we can see, especially if you look at some of the ways that people have been looking at making money online over the last year. We spoke about a bunch of stuff. I think it's just important to think about the way that your business runs and the way that your business makes money, and we decided that we wanted to try out membership, and it's been pretty good so far. The response that we've had has been pretty good. We're learning a lot, we're adapting and growing. And we're trying to get some fun stuff out to our members, and we're thinking about the way that we can increase that. And this for us is a long-term plan, and we have a long-term view on it. So we would really appreciate it if you supported us or any show at Relay FM by becoming a member and giving money directly to the shows that you love. For everybody that has done that, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to us that you would consider giving us money. So thank you so much.
And I think that about wraps up what happened in December, unless you guys want to add a little more.
It's been a big year, man.
Yeah.
I like doing this. You know, it's a nice way to kind of wrap up the year, to look back at everything. And I'm excited to see what 2016 is going to bring. iOS 10, you know, we're going to start talking about that soon, but I think that's going to be a big deal. I think that's going to be our big story.
iPhone 7.
Yeah, I mean, the iPhone 7 is going to be awesome, obviously. You know, it will do whatever it does. But I just think that just in my mind, that 10 number should mean something significant. But we'll wait and see.
Yep.
Maybe it becomes like, maybe then from then on we just go 10.1, 10.2. Maybe 10 is as high as Apple can get.
That's right.
And then we're just going to continue along the 10 line forever now.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm gonna mix up the language a bunch on the show. I'll just go ahead and
Just don't say
Ask for forgiveness
iOS
now.
X, please.
no, that's a ridiculous mistake that I would not make.
All right, so I think that about wraps up this week's episode. We have a ton of show notes over at relay.fm/connected/71. You can check those out. They're also, of course, in your podcast app of choice. I want to take a moment again to thank our friends over at TextExpander from Smile and Braintree for helping support this week's episode. Most importantly, thank you all for listening to this show throughout the whole year. We really, really appreciate it. Obviously, we'll be back now in 2016. We all hope that you have a fantastic new year. If you want to find us online, there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can go to macstories.net to find Federico. You can go to 512pixels.net to find Stephen, and we're all on Twitter. Federico is at Viticci, Viticci. Stephen is at ISMH, and I am at iMyke, IMYK. We'll be back next time. Until then, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Arrivederci e buon anno.
He's done it again.
Adios. It's not fair. I don't know any other Spanish. You know the entire language.